because I'm younger in my year, I won't be able to vote in the next general election. There are 18-year-olds who can vote, but it's a shared future. They're going to vote for the future I won't be able to be a part of, and I won't have a say in. Do you feel on the basis of that there needs to be some reform in the education or the voting system for that?
Well, we are suggesting that we should bring the voting age down to 16. I mean, it is a bit controversial. Not everybody thinks it's a good idea. But I have to admit that the thing that I've always found difficult about this argument is if you're allowed to get married or you're allowed to go off and join the army when you're 16, then, what's the argument that you're not old enough to vote? And that's certainly something that Ed has said that, especially after the Scottish referendum, when I think it was quite clear that a lot of young people took a real keen interest, that we've decided that that's the way to go.
In my opinion, I think one of Labour's flagship kind of voting policies now is how you're going to say you're going to lower the university fees to £6,000. One thing I'm seeing as an A-level student is, all that the current government have done is extend them. How are you actually going to lower them down, and do you think it's realistic?
Oh yes, it has to be realistic.
Yeah. I only say that, and it's because how the Lib Dems said that wasn't going to happen. Obviously, when they came in the coalition, it did happen. It's just whether it's one of those promises or how you think it's really going to be implemented.
I don't know whether it's. I'd like to say let's be fair to the Lib Dems, although I'm not normally, and maybe you will think it's not being fair to them.
Yeah.
But when the Lib Dems said that, they never thought for a second that they would have power and would have to deliver on it. And one of the things that I would hold against them about that is, I've noticed people have started to say that they promised to cut. No, they didn't. They promised to abolish tuition fees. And the NUS, perfectly reasonably and properly, as everybody does during an election campaign, every candidate is inundated with pressure groups wanting you to promise to do this, that and the other. Yeah. And you have to make your own mind up, and your party has to make its mind up about how you handle that. And the NUS wrote to all of us, every parliamentary candidate for every party, and said, we want you to promise to abolish tuition fees. And we wrote back and said, look, we're really sorry, we can't do that. We understand why you want it. We sympathise with your point of view. We only introduced tuition fees in the first place with considerable reluctance. I mean, we were in opposition then, but we had ongoing rows and discussions about it over a period of some years, because people on the education team were saying, we want to give the opportunity to a lot more young people to study in further and higher education. We can't afford to do that with the system we have now and with the grants we have now. There just isn't enough money. So we have to look at what other countries do. What do? They charge fees. And if we want to expand the intake of further and higher education, we have to start charging fees, hopefully at a modest level, but we have to do that. And as I say, it was an up and a down, a row for years, but because all of us had some kind of free higher education. And people didn't want to change that. But in the end, we had to accept that the numbers added up and that it was the only way to do it. So we wrote back to the NUS and said, I'm sorry, we'd love to promise that, but we can't. It's not realistic, and it would mean abandoning the thing that is also a goal for you as well as us, which is to expand the number of people who can go to university. But the Liberals thought that they wouldn't have to stand by it. And so they promised, and the thing that I would certainly hold very much against Nick Clegg if I were a member of the Liberal Party, and particularly if I'd been a Liberal Democrat parliamentary candidate, is that they told them all to go to the nearest sort of student body and stand with the big flag and the big thing that you're supposed to sign, and all have their photographs taken with it. So they all did. So every one of them as an individual had committed themselves to a goal that the leadership actually knew was unrealistic, but they didn't think they'd have to deliver.